Yeah, thank you. So actually, thank you, Rohan, as well, because it's kind of the perfect setup for this talk. As Philip has kind of like been flattering me and saying lots of nice things, actually, like, you know, all this stuff is the product of the teams and the companies I work with. I've just been very privileged to work with some exceptional people, and our work has been featured in these great places. And now I kind of have this privilege of working at this huge website called Booking.com, which is the world's biggest, you know, online store for travel. And it's hugely privileging because everything else I did up to that point was very difficult, very challenging, and a lot of it didn't work. So of course I learned a lot along the way about turning data into products, which hopefully I'm going to share a little bit with you today, and it can hopefully, you know, have some impact on what you're working on. And when I say real people, it's an interesting thing, right? So I get a lot of feedback about our own product from, say, colleagues and people I work with, and they'll give me feedback about this feature or how this product works. And all the time I'm thinking, when I'm listening to them, is that, you know, it's great that you have the feedback, but I don't optimize the website, the experience for you. I'm optimizing the experience of the website for your mum and dad, because they are the vast majority of consumers online. Average people outside of this room, without computer science degrees, and not necessarily, you know, really wanting to learn about the complexity of stuff. So that's what I mean by real people. And I'm just going to tell like a bunch of stories about things I learned along the way over 10 years. And in fact, even go back to the origins of data science and where it all began, so we've got a bit of perspective and history, because everybody thinks big data is new and exciting and innovative. It kind of is. 2004, the seminal paper from Jeff and Sanjay at Google, and Google was of that size then that if you see their email addresses, it's just jeff@google.com. It's kind of indicative of how far we've come in that 11 years. But Jeff and Sanjay put this out in 2004. This is the seminal paper. This really kicks it off what we call big data today. A Yahoo team, actually produced Hadoop and pushed that out there in 2005. And if you think about the ecosystem for big data and data science now, it's huge. So many different tools, applications, and frameworks, all trying to solve, you know, different complex spaces in data science. And that's from the original paper. The process, well, you know, the function of MapReduce, which if you look at it simply, is like taking a program or create a program, split a very large, complex operation into many smaller ones, which are performed by computers. Computers pass it on at a finished stage, and it's reduced, it's aggregated, and simplified. And that's what we are. That's MapReduce, and that's what we can put at the root of all this stuff. But you can actually go back a little bit deeper into history and time and see what else we were doing. And this is a 1949 data center, a little bit different from the ones we have today. But these were computers, and actually your job application and your job title was computer. You're a human computer performing these calculations and then passing them on. And I was researching this story a couple of years back, and I found the whole thing fascinating. And it kind of links in with this guy, who's a bit of a hero of mine, a very interesting guy called Richard Feynman, who's actually like a minor celebrity in the States in the 60s and 70s as a physicist. You don't see physicists on TV anymore, but he was a physicist who was like a minor celebrity. And he came up with an optimization for all this human processing, for these human computers, which was, you know, he had a room full of people, have these, you know, manual calculating machines, and he would break the task into this person is adding, this person is multiplying, this person is cubing. They perform that function, and then they pass it on to the next person. But of course, Richard Feynman wasn't just doing that. He was actually working in Los Alamos on the Manhattan Project, which built the first nuclear bomb. And the very first IBM punch card machines were actually performing this calculation. They broke down very, very large, complex problems into smaller pieces, fed them in through these original computers. And actually, the programmers here, all the first programmers, were all women, actually. That's the history of programming, actually. All started out with women, which is like quite opposite to how the industry is today. But that's a different story, I think. But yeah, so the very first computers and the very first problem and solution was actually MapReduce. So I just find this whole thing fascinating about the history of where we've come from. And this story is like kind of quite fundamental, because I am essentially telling stories with data and trying to turn it into something which resonates and is powerful and is ultimately providing this rich consumer experience. And I'm a mapping person, so there we go. So yeah, like the first visualizations we produced This is before we had the written word. The first visualizations we were actually producing were maps scratched on the walls of caves. You'll find them all over Europe and all around the world, where we were trying to pass on information. We were trying to understand, know more about our world, and ultimately scratch it on a wall, visualize it, communicate with stories, and share knowledge. So I just find this stuff absolutely fascinating, and this is what I'm doing today. So I'm going to show you a bunch of visualizations and things we did at various different companies, and hopefully try and tell you a little bit about how I learned about consumers along the way. So this is something, maybe 2010, it's quite a long time ago now. This is a place called Itoworld, and we were working with some nice big data systems back in the time. And we were trying to tell stories about transport. We did a lot of transport data, analytics, processing, and visualization. And in 2010, I don't know if you remember, there was a very big volcanic eruption in Iceland, and it shut down most of airspace in the UK. So every line you're seeing here is actually a plane flight. It's all real data. And as you see, Europe's kind of shut down. And we were trying to get a message across with this. We were trying to communicate the impact of, yeah, there we go. So things are coming alive now. Little counter in the bottom left. And you'll see things really come back online now across Europe as the people start traveling again. And this, people love this. It went wild. I think we got like 1 million hits in the first 12 hours or something like that. And it just went on from there. Yeah, I get nice memories looking at that from back in the day. But we were trying to put a message out there. We were trying to communicate something. We were trying to communicate a little bit about the impact of the scale and how we need to think and plan ahead and how we plan our development in terms of airports and cities. Because often, we take one flight, we don't really think of the cumulative impact. But the skies above Europe are hugely busy. And we were trying to get this message across about that. And we did get a lot of popularity. We got a lot of traffic, a lot of hits. But actually, the feedback we got, by reading the comments in the section, was actually like everybody had missed the message, or the message that we were trying to transmit as well. And everyone said it was cool, everyone loved it, it was very awesome. But actually, there was no conversation about the message we were trying to get across, which is like, how do we think and plan about air travel and the future of our cities and that kind of thing. Actually failed with that, which was quite interesting to us, because that's what we thought we were trying to transmit. What was successful, though, we did this around the same time, is that various people started to take notice of it. We did get in these things like, Wired magazine. The tech crowd loved us, all that kind of thing. And we were working a lot with OpenStreetMap data. OpenStreetMap now has grown and grown and grown. And another story we were trying to tell was just to make people aware of the scale of OpenStreetMap, how it was growing. It was hugely important to our business because we ran everything off OpenStreetMap data. And we were just trying to tell this story to a wider audience about the scale, the impact of OpenStreetMap. And that appeared to work a little bit because we got a nice email from Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And he said, I have this TED talk coming up. I'm talking about data, open data, and I want to be able to tell a story of the importance of open data. Can you create a story which I can use at TED? Which is quite a scary thing, actually, when Sir Tim Berners-Lee emails you. You don't really know how to respond to the guy who created the internet or the web. It's a little bit scary. But we said yes, and we came up with a story. Again, OpenStreetMap-based, and this is it. And I don't know if you remember, in January 2010, that happened. So that's Haiti. It was a very, very large earthquake in Haiti. But actually what happened was quite unique and new at the time. Like search and rescue teams arrived, the whole place is broken up, many displaced people, lots of very bad things going on. They didn't actually have any maps to get around. They had quite authoritarian government at one point, and all the maps were like 30 or 40 years out of date. And of course, development had just happened all over the place. And coupled with the fact that everything was broken, it had a huge earthquake. So they couldn't actually navigate and get around, and it was a big problem. And OpenStreetMap at the time was an enabler. So people bought satellite imagery, people were able to trace over it. All the activity you see here is somebody editing OpenStreetMap. And if you see those blue areas which are emerging, that was actually people were able to spot where there were camps of displaced people. And where people were stuck out in the open without food or shelter. And this is a hugely powerful story. We did TED, very good, very nice, very popular. But the key thing, like the learning for us in actually translating that into a real great story, really powerful, was actually that image. It wasn't the visualization itself, although we hope to think it played a part. But this single image of like solidifying the whole story into one picture, which was a search and rescue team on the ground in Haiti with a GPS unit in their hand, using the data which was collected and shown in that wonderful visualization. That was actually the real power of the story and how we transmitted it. We had the visualization, but we also had this photo. And then from there, like the Guardian, I wrote an article for them. The BBC News picked it up. All very nice. But the crucial key, learning for us, or what we found out, was that we need to transmit and something that will resonate and people react to, and we can do that in much simpler ways, or much better ways, perhaps, than these wonderful visualizations we were creating. A lot of the power was in that one single image, that photo. So I kind of try and apply this thinking and have like 4 very simple rules for what we do with visualization, how we try and resonate, how we try and connect with consumers who may have very little technical knowledge at all, or they simply don't care. They're just trying to book a nice holiday. They're trying to book an experience, which is personalized. Very simple, right? I think these rules are all very simple. Don't show me a lot of data that's not relevant to me. Only show me things I'm interested in. There's very quick ways you can personalize with data without huge amounts of personalized data, which everybody loves to think about and connect with social networks and all that nice personal. There's very simple ways you can personalize websites right now just by knowing people's IP address. And that's hugely powerful and it resonates them if you're communicating with them in the right way and you understand the customs of a country and a language. That's hugely powerful. You don't necessarily need that much personalized data to personalize experiences. Accessible. I say accessible. Really, we're talking about usability, making things simple. Of course, we talk about products. We say, don't make me think. The way I try and talk about it or try and share things about the team is like, don't make me look at a graph. Why would I want to look at a graph and have to think and work out and use data? Give me an answer. Don't make me think about it. If there's a problem, just give me the solution. And actionable. Of course, don't give me the problem or solution if I can't do anything about it. It's a key thing that sometimes we forget. And the last one I'll spend a bit more time on, instinctive, because that's actually quite a challenging area. And I think instinctive might even be the wrong word, but I can't think of a better word yet, so I'm just still using it. It's like, how do we understand the context, the emotions, the environment that a decision is being made in? While a holiday in itself might be very enjoyable, and people want to book a lovely, enjoyable experience, actually people have a lot of stress about booking a holiday, about booking a hotel, because you're making a huge personal investment in terms of time, money, and we all have limited periods that we can take holidays in. There's a lot of risk involved, and you're very worried about making the wrong choices, or staying in the wrong hotel, or staying in the wrong place. So trying to understand that environment and the psychology and the context of where people are making decisions is really, really crucial. And I can show you a good example of a product where I totally failed with. And this was like one of the first products I ever made. So like I had this hypothesis that people don't really like traveling in London to work. It just seems like a reasonable hypothesis because you spend a lot of time stuck in the tube and it's hot and it's not very pleasant and it's very crowded. And I had these stats and I was like, oh my God, it's insane the amount of time people spend traveling. And the one thing people in London talk about a lot is complaining about traveling and property, absolutely obsessed with buying or renting property. So I came up with this, this product. It looks so old now, but I guess it was back in the day. But quite advanced in the time. New kind of search engine based on time, property search. Where you could have a trade-off between, where you would travel to and from, show you relevant places, show you properties within that. Lots of data which break all my simple visualization rules that I know now, but of course I didn't know back when I started off. And got lots of tech coverage as it does, and all my computer science friends thought, awesome, well engineered, good job. But of course nobody used it at all, so it's a complete failure. And afterwards I tried to work out what had gone wrong or why people weren't connecting or using this product, apart from it being quite difficult to use and all that stuff. And I actually just listened to conversations people were having about property. People are always talking about property in London. And actually I quickly realized that the vast majority of people have already exactly in mind, actually, the place or the area they want to stay in. But when they're searching for property, they're refining on smaller details which relate to their budget, how many bedrooms. And people have already made this decision like way further up the chain. So I really wasn't adding any value with this. I wasn't fitting in with like, the instinctive environment that people were making these decisions based on. So that was a total failure, but hopefully one which was quite valuable later on. And talking about thermostats as well. I did work on a competitor to Nest for a while. This is follow on from Rohan. So after these times, I try and invest time and effort in understanding the psychology, in understanding the ways that people are making a decision, or on the way in which they operate. So we did research actually around heating devices and thermostats. Perfect follow on from Rohan. And this is real, so this is a real life use case in person. And it's just this most fabulous learning and insight that she found her thermostat so difficult to use, couldn't understand the buttons, whatever, that she came up with the most logical, and it was brilliant, pure logic, that if she wanted to get the house hot again, she'd put the thermostat in the fridge or the freezer, so the thermostat would get really cold and the heating would go on very high. This perfect, brutal logic for how to use a product. And we were just sitting there in awe of this person. We were like, you know what, she's really smart, but we've engineered things so badly. We've engineered thermostats, engineered by engineers, for engineers, that people end up sticking them in their fridge and not actually being able to use them. Which gave us a huge amount of insight into then how to make better products and visualize things for people through that. And this is actually like one thing, I wasn't responsible for this. I'm disowning it completely. But this was a thing I picked up on this project. Kind of inherited it. We were trying to visualize lots of energy data for the house, give them real insight, tell them what's going on. And it's a dashboard, right? Lots of dials, lots of charts. Completely breaks all the rules of what I now stick by and do life. And the feedback we got, it was only 6 people, but the feedback we got from 5 out of 6 people was, what is a dashboard? And our whole product was basically a dashboard. We had put lots of dials, charts, and all these things on it. And people actually do not want to sit a science exam. People do not want to go back to school and be doing maths and science and having to read stuff off graphs. So that really plays into our strengths of don't make me read a graph. We can have much simpler ways of communicating information. And I have a minute left, so I'm just going to wrap up with some beautifully simple examples, not by me or any team I worked with. This is by a couple of people called After the Flood. They're specialized in data visualization in the UK. And what they did is just pure simplicity and brilliance is this. By far and away, some of the most powerful things I can and will do with data are turning very simple, very large, complex data sets into something incredibly simple in a sentence. Hugely powerful, hugely effective. I really recommend the work of these people. And I think once you're doing that, and you are making it simple and that small, you're actually not talking about the rules of visualization anymore. What we're talking about is insight at that point. You are communicating clearly. You're not making people work. So the way we think about it now is we try and think about insight. How do we create something that will resonate with customers? And we apply these 4 simple rules. And we definitely make sure that they don't need to look on a graph. And that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Chris. So that's quite an achievement to have your work featured by Tim Berners-Lee. So I'm quite envious about that achievement, much more than financial exits. So that's a much cooler credit to have.
I don't know, we might have liked an exit as well. Tim Berners-Lee is he's an awe-inspiring guy, and he's very humble, actually. I think one of the great things I learned from Tim Berners-Lee is that he's this figure which we all love and admire, but he's so humble.
While since I don't want to be the only one to have asked a question, we allow for 1 question from the audience while we're setting up our next speaker. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and the person with the microphone will come to you.
You mentioned testing with 6 people, one of the products you presented. Do you still do a lot of usability and user testing, or do you have more trust in your experience, and what's the balance between what your experience tells you, and you learn from your mistakes, of course, and what you still learn from people like seeing them using the product?
So I have no trust in my own opinion, or no trust in my own knowledge, actually. Actually, one of the things I didn't talk about at Booking.com is that, like, as far as I know, we're one of the most advanced tech outfits out there in terms of like A/B testing and the sheer volume of optimization and testing we're doing on our website. And the brilliance of our like methodology and approach is that we just try and remove all opinion and knowledge. And like one of the things we hire about is like we don't talk about hiring for experts. We hire about people who can apply skill sets and learn. But actually, like, you know, when we put our ideas and knowledge to the test, of course, you know, when we get real feedback and real data, I'm wrong 9 times out of 10. So really, I put now no trust in my own like opinion. It's just about, well, how do we have the right methodology, and always rely on that, you know, that feedback from the user, which we get from A/B testing. Plus, yeah, we do a lot of in-depth research as well. Psychological stuff is, you know, if you're in e-commerce and you're not trying to understand the psychology of your customer and the way they're making a decision and what they're purchasing, then you really are missing out.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris. Much appreciated.
Thank you.